The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of the Galactic Strategic Command Academy, its golden rays reflecting off the towering spires that housed the most promising minds from across 47 star systems. Admiral Kextar adjusted his ceremonial uniform as he watched the new arrivals through his office window, his four eyes scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. In his 3 centuries of service, he had seen thousands of cadets pass through these halls, each species bringing their unique strengths to the academy. The Zephyrians floated gracefully above the ground, their translucent bodies shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated their excitement. The massive Gorlak delegation stomped forward with characteristic determination, their rock-like skin glinting with embedded metal augmentations. Even the mysterious Void Walkers had sent representatives, their shadow-wreathed forms barely visible as they glided between the other students. But something felt different about this year's intake. The Admiral's subordinate, Commander Velnash, a tall insectoid with clicking mandibles, approached with the registration tablet. "Sir, we have an irregularity in the enrollment records." Kextar turned from the window, his primary eyes focusing on the commander while his secondary pair continued monitoring the courtyard. "Explain." "A late registration came through the quantum channels last night. The applicant bypassed our standard screening protocols somehow. The file shows only basic information: name, Sarah Chun, species listed as human." The Admiral's head crest flattened against his skull, a sign of confusion among his people. "Human? I'm not familiar with that species designation. From which sector do they originate?" "That's the problem, sir. The database shows no record of humanity in any of our allied systems. No diplomatic contact, no trade agreements, no military encounters. It's as if they don't exist in our records. Yet somehow this individual gained access to our most secure enrollment systems." Through the window, Kextar spotted her immediately. While other species clustered in groups according to their kind, one figure stood alone near the Academy's central fountain. She appeared remarkably ordinary by galactic standards. Bipedal, hair the color of rich soil, wearing simple traveling clothes that seemed almost primitive compared to the advanced fabrics and energy shields of her fellow students. What struck the Admiral most was her posture. Every other new cadet displayed some form of nervousness or excitement. The Crystalline Collective's representative kept shifting through different geometric configurations. The young Zephyrian's light patterns flickered rapidly with anticipation. But the human stood with perfect stillness, observing everything with calm, calculating eyes. "Has she submitted her physical and mental evaluation results?" Kextar asked. Commander Velnash's antennae twitched nervously. "Sir, that's another anomaly. Her test scores are unprecedented. Perfect marks in theoretical physics, quantum mechanics, and multidimensional tactical analysis. Her physical evaluation shows baseline readings across all categories, yet somehow she completed the endurance trials faster than any previous applicant." Baseline readings? No enhanced strength, no energy manipulation abilities, no advanced neural processing speeds. By all measurements, she appears to be from a non-augmented species, yet her performance suggests otherwise. The Admiral watched as Sarah Chun moved toward the main entrance, noting how other students unconsciously stepped aside to let her pass. There was something about her presence that commanded respect without demanding it, an aura of quiet confidence that made the air around her seem charged with potential. "Run a deep scan on the enrollment records," Kextar ordered. "I want to know how she accessed our systems and who authorized her admission. In the meantime, assign her to Alpha Squadron. If she's as capable as her scores suggest, let's see how she performs alongside our best." The commander saluted and departed, leaving the Admiral alone with his thoughts. In the Academy's history, they had trained warriors from species that could survive in the vacuum of space, beings that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, and creatures whose intelligence operated across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Yet something about this small, seemingly ordinary human made him feel as though the galaxy was about to change in ways none of them could predict. As Sarah Chun disappeared into the Academy's main hall, Admiral Kextar made a mental note to personally monitor her progress. The universe had taught him to be wary of anomalies, and Sarah Chun was the most significant anomaly to walk through his Academy's doors in centuries. The orientation assembly took place in the Grand Amphitheater, a massive dome that could accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and atmospheric requirements. Force fields created individualized environmental pockets, while translation matrices ensured every word was understood regardless of the speaker's origin. Sarah found herself seated in the human-designated section, which consisted of exactly one chair. Dean Morpheus, an ancient being whose crystalline body had been shaped by eons of accumulated knowledge, began the traditional welcome address. Students of the Galactic Strategic Command Academy, you represent the finest minds and strongest warriors from across our allied systems. Here, you will learn not just to fight, but to think, to lead, and to protect the innocent across the galaxy. Sarah listened with perfect attention, but part of her mind was already cataloging the defensive systems she had observed, the patrol patterns of the security forces, and the energy signatures of the various alien technologies around her. It was habit more than necessity. Humans had learned long ago that survival often depended on understanding your environment completely. You will be divided into squadrons based on your specializations and compatibility assessments, the Dean continued. Each squadron will function as a unit throughout your training, learning to compensate for individual weaknesses and amplify collective strengths. When Alpha Squadron was announced, Sarah noted her placement with quiet satisfaction. The squadron consisted of 7 members: herself, 2 Drachmarie warriors whose scales could deflect energy weapons, a Nexus intellect capable of processing thousands of calculations simultaneously, a Vorthan scout whose body could phase through solid matter, a Corvin engineer whose 4 arms could work on multiple projects simultaneously, and, most interestingly, a young Eternal named Zaraketh. Eternals were among the most respected species in the galaxy, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form millennia ago. For one to attend the academy was unprecedented, suggesting either a great honor or a significant concern about current galactic security. As the squadrons formed, Sarah observed the dynamics immediately. The Drachmarie, Thane, and Vex positioned themselves as obvious physical leaders. The Nexus intellect, designated Node 7, began calculating optimal formation strategies. The Vorthan, Whisper, seemed to evaluate escape routes. The Corvin, Gearite, examined the technological aspects of their equipment. But Zaraketh simply observed Sarah, her energy form shifting through spectrums of light that suggested deep contemplation. "You are the anomaly," Zaraketh said, her voice resonating directly in their minds. "The unknown variable that has caused ripples in the probability streams." Sarah met the Eternal's gaze calmly. "I'm just here to learn, like everyone else." "Are you?" Zaraketh's form brightened slightly. "My people have been monitoring quantum fluctuations across the galaxy for the past solar cycle. Every major shift has somehow connected to Earth, a world that officially does not exist in any of our databases." The other squadron members had stopped their individual assessments to listen. Thane, the larger of the 2 Drachmarie, stepped closer. "What's an Earth?" "According to our records, nothing," Node 7 interjected, his mechanical voice precise. "However, the data suggests otherwise. Probability calculations indicate a 97.3% chance that significant events in the coming cycle will originate from this Sarah Chen's presence here." Sarah smiled, an expression that seemed to make the air around her shimmer with unseen possibilities. "Well, then, I suppose we should make sure we're ready for whatever those events might be." As if summoned by her words, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the academy. Emergency lights bathed the amphitheater in pulsing red as Dean Morpheus's crystalline form flared with urgent energy. "All personnel to stations," his amplified voice echoed through every corridor. "We have incoming vessels of unknown configuration. Defensive protocols are now in effect." "Sarah," Zaraketh said urgently, "do you know who they are?" Sarah's response was quiet, but somehow every member of Alpha Squadron heard her clearly despite the chaos around them. "Emergency protocols have isolated this section," Node 7 reported, his optical sensors flickering as he interfaced with the Academy's systems. "Primary evacuation routes are blocked. Secondary systems are being systematically disabled." "Scan for what?" Sarah's answer was interrupted by a sound none of them had heard before, a deep, resonant tone that they consume entire civilizations, processing every living being into biomass to fuel their endless expansion across. Humanity volunteered to be the shield between our galaxy and everything that wants to destroy it. Another impact shook the Academy as the enemy vessels began deploying landing craft. Through the dome, they could see swarms of smaller ships descending like metallic insects, each one filled with what sensors could only describe as living weapons. "For 3 millennia, Earth has stood as the last barrier," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. Every time the Devourers found a way into our reality, humanity pushed them back. Every time they adapted, we adapted faster. Every time they evolved new horrors, we became more horrible. Whisper phased partially out of normal space, his scout training allowing him to observe the attackers from multiple dimensional angles. Sarah, if your species has been fighting these beings for so long, why are you here? Why attend the academy? Because we're losing. The simple statement carried such weight that even the massive Drachmarie felt small. Outside, the first landing craft had reached the academy grounds, and their passengers were beginning to emerge. From their vantage point in the amphitheater, the squadron could see creatures that seemed to blend the worst aspects of insect, machine, and something else entirely, something that hurt to look at directly. The Devourers have evolved beyond our ability to contain them, Sarah explained, moving to one of the emergency weapons lockers. With movements that spoke of countless hours of combat training, she began arming herself with Academy-issue equipment. They've learned to replicate our technologies, to predict our strategies, to counter everything that made humanity effective. She paused, checking the charge on an energy rifle with the casual expertise of a veteran soldier. But they've never encountered the combined military might of the Galactic Alliance. They've never faced Drachmarie warriors, eternal energy manipulation, Corvin engineering, Nexus tactical processing, or Vorthan infiltration techniques. Gearwright's forearms moved in complex patterns as he began modifying the squadron's equipment with hidden functions. You're saying humanity engineered your enrollment here as part of some larger strategy. I'm saying that when the Academy's distress call reaches the Alliance fleet, when every military force in the galaxy converges on this location to defend their most precious training facility, the Devourers are going to face something they've never encountered before. Node 7's optical array focused on Sarah with new understanding. You're bait. We all are, Sarah corrected. But I'm bait that bites back. The amphitheater's main entrance suddenly erupted in a shower of molten metal as something began cutting through the blast doors. The sound was like a fusion torch mixed with the screams of the dying, and sparks fell like burning rain across the amphitheater floor. Alpha Squadron automatically moved into defensive positions, their training overriding the shock of the revelations. The two Drachmarie took point positions, their scaled hide beginning to generate defensive energy fields. Node 7 interfaced directly with the amphitheater's remaining systems, gaining control of emergency lighting and atmospheric controls. Whisper faded partially out of phase, preparing for reconnaissance or flanking maneuvers. Gearwright's modified equipment hummed with new capabilities as he completed his emergency upgrades. Zaraketh began gathering energy in patterns that made the air itself shimmer with potential violence. But Sarah Chun moved to the front of the formation, and, for the first time, her human limitations seemed to fall away like a discarded disguise. Her movements became fluid beyond normal biology. Her awareness expanded to encompass details no baseline species should be able to process, and her eyes began to reflect light in ways that suggested hidden depths of enhancement. "Stay behind me," she said, and her voice now carried harmonics that spoke of vocal cords designed for more than just communication. "Whatever comes through that door, remember that the Devourers have never faced a united galaxy. Today, they learn why that's a mistake." The blast door finally gave way, collapsing inward with a thunderous crash. Through the smoking gap came creatures that defied description, beings that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to perceive. Their forms shifted constantly, blending organic curves with mechanical precision, while appendages that might have been weapons or sensory organs swept the amphitheater with deadly intent. The first Devourer to enter focused its attention directly on Sarah, its multiple sensor arrays zeroing in on her with unmistakable recognition. When it spoke, its voice was a harmony of different tones that suggested it was simultaneously speaking in multiple languages and dimensional frequencies. "Human warrior anomaly threat. You will be processed. Your genetic material will be incorporated. Your species' resistance adaptations will be assimilated." Sarah raised her weapon with movements so fast they blurred, but her voice remained perfectly calm. "You can try." The battle for the Academy was about to begin, and, with it, the first time in 3,000 years that humanity's true nature would be revealed to the galaxy. As the first shots were fired in the amphitheater, neither side yet realized that this encounter would change the balance of power in ways that would echo across dimensions. The galaxy was about to discover why Earth's children had been hidden for so long, and Why that had been a mercy rather than a punishment. The first exchange of fire between Alpha Squadron and the Devourers shattered every assumption about human capabilities that the galactic species had formed. Sarah's energy rifle discharged with precision that defied physics, each shot hitting targets that were moving in patterns designed to confuse advanced targeting systems. But more disturbing than her accuracy was the way she moved, flowing between Devourer attacks with an economy of motion that spoke of enhancements far beyond baseline biology. Impossible, breathed Node 7 as his sensors tracked Sarah's movements. Her reaction times are exceeding the theoretical limits of organic neural processing. The lead Devourer, a creature whose form seemed to shift between solid matter and living shadow, launched itself directly at Sarah with appendages that crackled with dimensional energy. Instead of dodging, she stepped forward to meet it, and when they collided, the Devourer was the one that gave ground. Thane and Vex, the Drakmari warriors, had faced countless enemies in their military careers, but they found themselves staring in shock as Sarah grappled hand-to-hand with a being that their energy weapons had barely scratched. Her human hands, which should have been vulnerable flesh, struck the creature's shifting form with impacts that sent shockwaves through the amphitheater floor. How is she doing that? Whisper asked, his scout training analyzing Sarah's combat techniques. She's using leverage and momentum in ways that shouldn't be possible given standard humanoid anatomy. Zaraketh's energy form pulsed with urgent enlightenment. She's not baseline human. None of them are. The species designation, human, must refer to the result of extensive modification, not the original form. As if responding to their growing understanding, Sarah's combat style shifted again. Her movements became more fluid, more precise, and distinctly inhuman. When a second Devourer attempted to flank her, she twisted in midair in a way that suggested her spine contained more vertebrae than standard bipedal anatomy allowed. "Gear right," Sarah called out while simultaneously firing at 3 different targets. "Can you interface with the Academy's manufacturing bay? We need specialized ammunition." The Corbin engineer's 4 arms moved in complex patterns across his modified equipment. "I can access the fabrication systems, but I don't know what specifications to use against these creatures." "Crystallized temporal particles, encased in collapsed matter shells," Sarah replied without hesitation. "The fabrication patterns are stored in Earth military database Echo 7 Alpha. Authorization code is, well, it's my biometric signature." Gearite hesitated for a moment. "Sarah, those are theoretical weapons. The energy requirements alone would. Just do it." As Gearite began his work, more Devourers poured through the breach. These new arrivals were different from the first wave, larger, more heavily armored, and moving with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. But what made Alpha Squadron truly understand the scope of the threat they faced was when the creatures began adapting in real time to their tactics. Node 7 had been using the amphitheater's emergency systems to create strobe lighting patterns that disrupted Devourer visual sensors. Within minutes, the creatures compensated, their optical arrays shifting to different spectral ranges. Whisper's phasing attacks were initially devastating, but the enemy quickly developed countermeasures that could track him across dimensional boundaries. Only Sarah's attacks continued to be effective, and the reason became clear as the battle progressed. She wasn't just fighting with superior reflexes or advanced weapons, she was fighting with knowledge. Every movement, every tactical decision, every target she chose revealed an understanding of Devourer physiology and psychology that could only come from extensive direct experience. "Sarah," Zaraketh called out during a brief lull in the fighting, "how many of these creatures have you personally fought?" "Personally." Sarah paused to reload her weapon with movements so practiced they were obviously automatic. "Maybe 10,000. But I've reviewed combat data from every engagement humanity has had with them over 3 millennia. Pattern recognition is the specialty of my species." The statement hit the squadron like a physical blow. 10,000. The number represented more combat experience against this specific enemy than the rest of the galactic military had combined experience fighting anything. That was when Gearite's modifications bore fruit. The Academy's manufacturing bay, responding to Sarah's biometric authorization, began producing ammunition that registered as completely unknown to standard galactic weapons technology. When Sarah loaded the new rounds into her rifle, the weapon's entire energy signature changed. Her first shot with the new ammunition didn't just destroy a Devourer, it erased it. The creatures simply ceased to exist, not disintegrated, but deleted from reality with surgical precision. "What did you just do?" Thane demanded, his warrior's instincts telling him he had just witnessed something that redefined the rules of warfare. Temporal crystallization, Sarah replied, continuing to fire with mechanical precision. The ammunition locks the target's quantum state in a temporal loop that removes them from the current timeline. It's not death, it's temporal exile. Vex, the smaller but more aggressive Drachmarie, watched as Sarah's shots began systematically removing Devourers from existence. These are weapons designed specifically to fight these creatures. Your species developed technology that targets fundamental aspects of reality itself. We had to, Sarah said simply. The Devourers regenerate from any physical damage, adapt to any energy attack, and learn from every defeat. The only way to stop them is to remove them from the equation entirely. As Alpha Squadron absorbed this revelation, the tactical situation in the amphitheater shifted dramatically. The remaining Devourers, faced with weapons that could simply delete them from existence, began a coordinated withdrawal. But their retreat was tactical, not panicked. They were regrouping for a larger assault. Through the amphitheater's damaged dome, the squadron could see the enemy fleet taking new positions around the academy. But something else was happening in the space beyond. New energy signatures were appearing at the edge of sensor range. Node 7, Sarah said. Can you access the academy's long-range sensors? Affirmative. I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions throughout the sector. Fleet elements from every major galactic civilization are converging on this location. Sarah smiled, and for the first time, her expression held nothing human about it. Right on schedule. Whisper, his scout training allowing him to piece together tactical situations quickly, began to understand. This was planned. The Devourer attack, your presence here, even the timing of the assault, it's all part of a larger strategy. The question, Zaraketh said, her energy form shifting to patterns that indicated deep concern, is whether this strategy is designed to save the galaxy or to reveal humanity's true capabilities to every military force in known space. Sarah's answer was interrupted by a new sound, the deep harmonic resonance of dimensional fold drives operating at maximum capacity. Through the gaps in the amphitheater's dome, they could see reality itself bending as something massive prepared to emerge from hyperspace. Both, Sarah said quietly. For 3,000 years, humanity has protected the galaxy while remaining hidden. But the Devourers have evolved beyond our ability to contain alone. It's time for the galaxy to learn the truth about the war that's been fought in their name. The first of the galactic fleet elements materialized in normal space, a Drachmarie battle squadron whose weapons were already charging for combat. They were followed by Zephyrian light cruisers, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with battle excitement. Corvin engineering ships appeared with their massive manufacturing capabilities ready for rapid weapon production. Even the mysterious Void Walker shadow fleets decloaked, their presence announced only by the way space itself seemed to darken around their positions. But what made Alpha Squadron truly understand the scope of what was about to unfold was when the human fleet arrived. They materialized from what appeared to be empty space, their stealth technology so advanced that even Node 7 sensors had difficulty tracking them. Dozens of ships that looked nothing like the primitive vessel one would expect from a newly discovered species. These were warships built for a specific purpose, with hull configurations that spoke of extensive combat experience against enemies that conventional tactics couldn't touch. Sarah, Gearwright said, his engineering background allowing him to appreciate the implications of what he was seeing. Those ships, their technology levels are centuries ahead of anything in the galactic database. Humanity has had a very focused research and development program, Sarah replied. When your entire species' existence depends on being able to fight creatures that can adapt to anything, you tend to innovate quickly. Above them, the combined galactic fleet began forming battle lines as the Devourer vessels moved to engage. But, for the first time in their invasion, the extra-dimensional predators were facing something they had never encountered, a united galaxy that knew they were coming. The real battle was about to begin, and, with it, humanity's 3,000-year secret would finally be revealed to the universe. Alpha Squadron found themselves at the center of a conflict that would determine not just the fate of the Academy, but the future relationship between Earth and every other civilization in the galaxy. As the first massive weapons exchanges lit up the void above them, Sarah Chun prepared to show the galaxy exactly why humanity had been worth hiding for so long. The space above the Academy transformed into a maelstrom of energy and destruction as the combined galactic fleet engaged the Devourer invasion force. From their vantage point in the damaged amphitheater, Alpha Squadron witnessed the largest space battle in recorded galactic history, and the first time humanity's true military capabilities were displayed for the universe to see. The human ships moved unlike anything the galactic species had ever encountered. Where other vessels relied on conventional physics for maneuvering, human warships seemed to slip between dimensions, appearing and disappearing with tactical precision that defied sensor tracking. Their weapons didn't just destroy enemy vessels, they systematically dismantled them at the molecular level, preventing the Devourers from regenerating or adapting to the attacks. "By the ancient crystals," whispered Dean Morpheus through the Academy's communication system, his voice reaching every functional receiver in the facility. "The human combat doctrine is unlike anything in our tactical databases. They're fighting a war we didn't know existed." Sarah Chen stood amid the debris of their amphitheater battle, her human appearance now obviously a carefully maintained facade. Her movements remained fluid in ways that suggested significant internal modifications, and her tactical awareness encompassed details that no baseline species could process simultaneously. "Node 7, she said. "Patch me into the Academy's main communication array." "Sarah, the communication systems are still partially jammed by Devourer interference patterns. Use the frequency I'm about to transmit. It will bypass their jamming." Sarah's voice changed, producing harmonic frequencies that made the air itself vibrate with modulated energy patterns. Node 7's sensors registered the transmission and immediately began broadcasting on channels that somehow cut through the dimensional static the Devourers generated. Within moments, response signals came back from every human ship in the battle zone. But, more importantly, translation protocols activated throughout the galactic fleet, allowing every species to understand what was happening. "Galactic Command, this is Colonel Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Force, currently embedded with Academy Training Unit Alpha Squadron," she broadcast, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding during crisis situations. "All fleet elements, be advised, you are engaged with an extra-dimensional species designation Devourer. Standard military doctrine is ineffective. Switching to Earth combat protocols." Admiral Kekstar's voice crackled through the Academy's speakers, filled with shock and growing understanding. "Colonel Chun, explain the nature of Earth's combat protocols and why they were not shared with the Galactic Military Database." Sarah's response carried the weight of 3,000 years of warfare. "Admiral, Earth Defense Force has been engaged in continuous combat operations against Devourer incursions for 3 millennia. Our combat protocols are classified because they represent evolutionary adaptations that fundamentally alter the nature of sapient life. We chose isolation to prevent these adaptations from spreading to other species unless absolutely necessary." Through the amphitheater's damaged dome, they could see the tide of battle shifting. Human ships began coordinating with galactic fleet elements, but instead of traditional formation flying, they were teaching other vessels to fight using tactics that seemed to blend technology with something approaching magic. Zaraketh, her energy form pulsing with urgent enlightenment, spoke directly into their minds. "The probability streams are stabilizing. For the first time in cycles, I can see clear future paths that don't end in galactic extinction." Whisper, his phasing ability allowing him to observe the battle from multiple dimensional angles, reported what he was seeing. "The human ships aren't just fighting the Devourers, they're teaching our fleet how to target their dimensional anchors. Every exchange is a lesson in advanced warfare." But it was Gearwright's engineering analysis that truly revealed the scope of what they were witnessing. "Sarah, the technology integration happening up there is impossible. Human ships are somehow sharing weapons modifications with every other vessel class in real time. Our manufacturing bay is producing ammunition designs that didn't exist an hour ago." Sarah moved to the amphitheater's central platform, her expression carrying the weight of decisions that had shaped galactic history. For 3,000 years, humanity has served as the galaxy's immune system, fighting threats that other species never knew existed. We've evolved into something designed specifically for warfare against enemies that conventional military doctrine can't touch. She gestured toward the battle raging above them, where human tactical innovations were being implemented across the entire galactic fleet in real time. But the Devourers have adapted beyond our ability to contain them alone. They've learned to counter every advantage that made humanity effective. Isolation is no longer a viable strategy. The implications of her words struck each squadron member with different levels of impact. Thane and Vex, as warriors, understood immediately that they were witnessing the end of one era of galactic security and the beginning of another. Node 7's processing cycles focused on the tactical revolution occurring above them, calculating how fundamentally military doctrine would need to change. Whisper recognized that reconnaissance and intelligence gathering would never be the same once other species learned human stealth capabilities. But it was Zaraketh who voiced the deeper concern. Sarah, if humanity has been genetically and technologically modified for continuous warfare, what happens to your species when the war ends? Sarah's smile held depths that spoke of considerations beyond individual survival. That's why I'm here, Zaraketh. The Academy doesn't just train military leaders. It trains beings who can think beyond war, who can imagine peace, who can guide civilizations towards something better than mere survival. Above them, the battle reached its climax as the last Devourer vessels began retreating toward dimensional fold points. But their withdrawal was different from previous encounters. These weren't creatures fleeing in panic, but predators reassessing their prey. They had encountered something new, something that would require adaptation. Admiral Kekstar's voice returned to the Academy's communication system, now carrying the authority of someone who understood he was part of a larger historical moment. Colonel Chun, on behalf of the Galactic Strategic Command, I formally request that Earth consider joining the Galactic Alliance as a full member civilization. Sarah's response came not just from her, but from every human ship in the battle zone, their voices harmonizing in ways that spoke of neural linking technologies beyond current galactic understanding. Admiral, Earth accepts your invitation. But understand that joining the Alliance means sharing not just our combat capabilities, but our responsibilities. The Devourers will return, and next time they'll be adapted to counter everything they've learned today. As the last enemy vessels vanished into dimensional folds, the combined galactic fleet began establishing defensive perimeters around the Academy. But the formations they took were different from standard galactic military doctrine. They incorporated human tactical innovations that treated space not as a three-dimensional battlefield, but as a multidimensional combat zone. Dean Morpheus materialized in the amphitheater, his crystalline form still showing signs of battle stress. Colonel Chun, your enrollment records indicated you were here to learn. Given what we've witnessed today, perhaps it would be more accurate to say you're here to teach. Sarah's human facade finally dropped completely, revealing enhancements that spoke of a species shaped by millennia of warfare against impossible odds. Her eyes held depths that suggested perception across multiple dimensional planes. Her movements carried the efficiency of form-following function, and her voice harmonized with frequencies that could interface directly with both biological and artificial intelligence systems. I'm here to learn how to be something other than a weapon, she said simply. Humanity has spent 3,000 years becoming perfect at war. Now we need to learn how to be perfect at peace. Alpha Squadron stood around her, each member processing the revelation that their mysterious classmate represented not just a new species, but the end of galactic isolation and the beginning of a new era where the universe's most effective warriors would need to learn entirely new skills. As recovery operations began around the Academy, and the Galactic Fleet established new protocols based on human tactical innovations, Sarachan looked up at the stars with eyes that had seen too much war and hoped to see something different in the future. The galaxy had learned that it had never been alone, that for 3 millennia a species of guardians had stood between civilization and annihilation. Now those guardians were stepping out of the shadows, ready to teach the universe how to fight impossible wars. But, more importantly, they were ready to learn how to build an impossible peace. The Academy's mission had changed forever, and, with it, the future of every species in the galaxy. Earth's children were no longer hidden, and the universe would never be the same. As the first joint human galactic tactical planning sessions began in the Academy's rebuilt command centers, Alpha Squadron realized they were no longer just students. They were the founding members of a new kind of military force, one designed not just to defend the galaxy, but to prepare it for threats that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. The real education was just beginning.